Good morning, everyone. My name is David Campos, and I'm the Public Information Officer for the County of Santa Clara's Emergency Operations Center. Welcome to Facebook Live with the County of Santa Clara. Good morning. I am here today with James Williams, who is the County Counsel for the County of Santa Clara and also one of the directors of the Emergency Operations Center. Just to note that we were actually wearing face coverings before this broadcast began, but we want to make sure that the American Sign Language interpreter can read our lips so that folks can have access to the information. Before I begin our conversation with James Williams today, I do want to note the latest case count for us. As of yesterday at 5 p.m., we have 5,478 confirmed COVID-19 cases in the county, 80 new cases, as well as 165 deaths total, a new death that occurred. And again, our thoughts and prayers go to the families and loved ones of those who passed, and we will continue to update the dashboards with the latest information. But we wanted to take this opportunity to speak to James Williams. As those of you who have been watching this over the last few weeks know, James, as County Counsel, he and his team are the ones who work with the public health officer to put together the health orders that have been issued. And so we wanted to take this opportunity to speak to James about the latest health order that will go into effect Monday. So James, thank you for being here, and thank you to your team. And maybe you can acknowledge some of the members of your team that I know that they don't get the credit they deserve for all the work they do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, David. It's a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to talk about the kind of new health order that's going into effect on Monday. David, you're right. We've got a great team of attorneys in my office who work directly with Dr. Cody in putting together the orders, and I want to specifically, acknowledge those folks working directly with me, Chief Assistant County Counsel Greta Hansen, Assistant County Counsel Tony Lopresti, and the team of Deputy County Counsels. We've got Kavita Narayan, Stephanie Safti, Grace Kuba, great team of folks who have been working with us.
I know these folks, work pretty late hours, and so I just wanted to make sure that we acknowledge them. So let's talk about this latest order that will go into effect on Monday the 13th. So maybe you can talk generally about what it is.
Yeah, so the new order that's going into effect on Monday is a different framework than the one we've been in so far. It's no longer a shelter-in-place framework, it's a risk reduction framework. And as Dr. Cody discussed in the announcement leading up to the order, and then when the order itself was discussed last week, the order is really based on a few core broad principles. Among those, outdoors is safer than indoors, that limiting the number of contacts and the duration of those contacts is safer than having longer or more frequent contacts. And that it's important to wear face coverings, and that other basic safety precautions should be applied across the board. And that's really embodied in an approach that no longer is as focused on definitions or lists of businesses that are open as essential or non-essential, or other categories of businesses that are open and closed, but instead an order that's really framed around some uniform and clear, broader principles, and if operations at businesses and other facilities and other activities can be done consistent with those broad principles, they can then occur. And so it's really based on that. Now, that doesn't mean that everything can happen, right? These safety precautions, these core uniform principles, are significant, and they represent, for the time being, certainly a new normal. As Dr. Cody has talked about, we are in a situation where we're going to be dealing with the coronavirus for quite some time to come. And so allowing as many things as possible, allowing people to be creative and entrepreneurial in being able to modify and adapt things to these core principles, but trying to provide them in a uniform manner so that all of us know what to expect when we go and visit any facility. And so all of us can kind of have a similar, consistent set of expectations to help create that new norm across the board. And so that's the real goal around this risk reduction framework.
Now, I'm not a health official, I'm an attorney like you, and so in trying to explain this process, one way that I have seen it, I see it, is that, shelter in place had a very important role to play in containing the spread of this virus, right? But once you get to a point where that has been contained, you cannot shelter in place forever.
Right.
So this is the next step, which makes sense, so that we can actually, live with this for the next however long it's going to take, a few months, right?
I think that's exactly right. The shelter-in-place order was very effective in our county, but we're seeing a huge increase in cases in Southern California, across the country, and yet there's also a need for us to be able to engage in as many activities as reasonable and safe that we can. I'm one of those folks who hasn't been able to get a haircut since
I think we have
March.
seen the progression over the last few weeks, James.
And and I know that's true for many people in many different settings. Of course, people who own businesses, work at businesses, but also people are trying to access services. And so, given that that we're going to be dealing with COVID for some time to come, how can we have some clear, across the board safety precautions and parameters, overlaid with some industry-specific information.
So a couple of things to our viewers. First of all, there is a Facebook Live in Spanish, en vivo con el condado, that will follow this Facebook Live. And we are committed to answering questions. So we're going to have a question and answer period next week where we're going to talk about more specifics. But we want to talk about general principles here. So let's talk about the businesses, right? So one of the things that you have said is that we will be issuing industry-specific guidances. So can you talk about that?
Sure. So we have a few set of broad principles, and I want to talk about those in a moment. But overlaid with those, for certain types of industries, there are some specific directives that in part incorporate relevant state guidance, and it's important to remember that we're all also subject to the state order, which is still in effect, and that incorporate some implementation and best practices and other requirements, mandatory requirements for certain specific industries. Some of those are already up on the website, the Public Health Department's website, and many others will be coming out today and tomorrow. And the whole team is working very hard to get those finalized. I know that people are eager for those. The personal care one, for example, did come out last night, along with outdoor dining and food facilities and construction.
So for personal care, that means that hair salons, nail
Yes.
salons, those establishments, provided that they follow those protocols, will be allowed to resume operations.
That's exactly right. And actually, under the framework of the new order, again, other than a small subset of categories, if you can abide by the broader requirements, yes, operations can resume or continue and be open. But I do want to talk about those broad
principles. So let's talk about,
yeah.
So there's this document that talks about the general principles or requirements that businesses have to follow. So if you're watching your business in Santa Clara County, what should you know?
So there are a few core principles, things that we should all see as customers, patrons, but also workers and business owners, pretty much across the board uniformly with very few exceptions. One of those, and very, very important one, is the social distancing protocols have been updated. So people by now hopefully are familiar with our COVID-19 Prepared check mark, our social distancing protocol visitor information sheet that are supposed to be posted at every single open facility. We have the summary sheet that's also needs to be posted as well. Well, the protocols themselves have been updated. They have to be submitted under penalty of perjury. There's an online form, and businesses need to do so by Monday. You can do so now at our website, which is covid19prepared.org. That's covid19prepared.org. You can fill it out electronically, be able to then download the relevant stuff to post at your facility, to hand out to workers, and to put that together. It's very, very critical. It's one of the most important things that we're doing to try to ensure that businesses are able to be open safely. So again, that's covid19prepared.org, and every business needs to fill out these updated protocols by Monday, even those that have already been open, even those that have been considered essential businesses.
So can we talk about that? So if you're a business that has been operating under the rules that you have laid out already, you still have to file this?
Absolutely. And that's important for several reasons. One is we're making these protocols now accessible, so they'll be able to be viewed by members of the public online. You know, they're not being approved by the county, but they need to be submitted so that they're accessible and available. Second, it has important information on how to help keep workers and customers safe, and including the specific requirements that are imposed under the order. That includes some of the other broad principles, like the fact that there needs to be universal, consistent, strict face covering indoors, period. Workers, for customers, across the board. And activities that would require removing your face covering indoors are not allowed. The second is, of course, the social distancing practices, maintaining at least 6 feet, and hygiene and sanitation. Those by now should be familiar to most folks. The third is a capacity or density limitation of 1 worker per 250 gross square feet of a facility and 1 customer per 150 square feet of space open to the public. Again, that's to ensure that there actually is the ability to have adequate social distancing, adequate space, and that places are not getting crowded or having too many people in confined locations. So those general principles are incorporated into that protocol. They apply, again, uniformly. And so, you know, it's very important that people take a look at that people are adhering to that. Our collective ability to be consistent and to have this as kind of the new norm across the board is going to be absolutely vital to our ability to control cases and prevent severe illness and death in our community. And we're hoping that by having these as more uniform and clear expectations, that's something that workers and customers, that all of us together as residents in this community can ensure is the new expectation wherever we go.
So can a business operate on Monday if they haven't done this?
No. So this is a requirement. You need to have this very simple to fill out. Again, covid19prepared.org. But it does need to be in place in order to operate, and it is an absolutely essential safety tool. A couple other things that I wanted to note that are also across the board. An important one is a reporting requirement to the Public Health Department if there is a positive case of someone who's been at the work site from a worker. We have seen some workplace outbreaks, and we want to make sure that we can move quickly to help workplaces contain any such outbreaks. And so that's an important new mandatory expectation on businesses for that reporting for a worker who has been at the workplace just prior to onset of symptoms or a positive test.
Now, James, that makes a lot of sense because I know we have a very robust contact tracing case investigation team that is ready to follow and trace the contacts of people that are infected. But unless we are notified of that, we're not going to know, right?
Right,
So
and you know, while we can eventually identify a workplace outbreak by connecting the dots between different cases, the way the case reports come in through the state system, that's not readily apparent. But having employers provide this proactive notification will allow us to much more quickly identify if there's a workplace outbreak. And speed is important here because being able to ensure that the appropriate isolation, quarantine is in place and quickly is essential to breaking chains of transmission.
Now, James, you noted that you have issued some guidances already, so personal care services, food facilities, outdoor dining, that's been an ongoing question with the state. So that's allowed, and you have guidances that are actually out there already?
Yes, we do. We're pleased that the outdoor dining situation has been resolved. That guidance, like I said, is out. And then many others that will be coming today and tomorrow.
So a couple more questions about that. One question that we keep getting asked is gyms. Are you issuing guidances on gyms so that they can open on Monday?
Yes, we will be, yes.
Okay, so that is coming. And I know that we have many minority-owned businesses, folks that are, monolingual speakers, and I know that our team, our language access team, will be providing this information in different languages to make sure that everyone has access to it. So now let's talk about the consumer. What are the kinds of things, so we talked about businesses, that if you're a resident of the county that you should know going forward, starting Monday?
Yeah, again, it's actually the same basic principles. One is, outdoors is safer than indoors. And second, that the face covering requirements and social distancing requirements are critical. And that's going to apply to any business you visit, but also activities that you do outside. So, for example, contact sports with members outside your household are prohibited because you can't maintain 6-foot social distancing. So these same basic principles are what are being carried forward through the order and through the guidance that's being issued related to the order. But really, if you focus on those key principles, I think the rest of it follows. And again, those key principles are that it's better if you can move activities or business activity or anything else outdoors. It's better, it's critical to have face coverings when in a place, whether outdoors or indoors, where you're interacting with anyone outside your household. And it's vital to be able to maintain at least 6-foot social distancing. And 6 foot's really a minimum. The more distancing and de-densification, the better. So those are kind of the core essential principles, and folks will see those embodied in the directives and guidance that is issued for specific sectors as well.
So a couple more points before we conclude, James. There are some businesses and activities that are not being allowed to resume operations. Can you talk a little bit about those and why you weren't able to do that?
Sure. There are some things that can't be done consistent with those core principles or that otherwise pose a much higher safety risk and probably won't be able to occur for some time. Activities where you'd have to remove your face covering, for instance, including indoor dining, but several other kind of indoor activities that would necessarily require removing the face covering to engage in the service or the activity. Activities that would inherently require you to come within 6 feet of another person, those are riskier. And places where there are large gatherings, so stadiums, arenas, concert halls, theaters, things like that, where there are large numbers of people who would be in a shared space for an extended period of time. Gatherings are particularly risky, and there's a lot of concern actually that some significant spread is actually occurring at gatherings, including private gatherings. We're all very eager to interact with others. That's how we are as people, right? But there's significant risk associated with gatherings.
One last point that I wanted to ask you about is we have seen cases rise in the county, but certainly around the state and around the country. And so what do you have to say to people who feel that maybe because we're taking this next step, it means that things are fine, that we're doing okay? It seems like, you know, we're doing this, but the reality is that the challenge is still very great. And in fact, the virus is still very present.
You know, you're absolutely right about that. You know, I think Dr. Cody has been quite clear about her concern at the rising case count. We've had our highest reported cases in Santa Clara County this week. And what we're seeing in Southern California and elsewhere across the country is extremely concerning. And so, you know, it's something we obviously closely monitor at the county and the Emergency Operations Center. You know, something that Dr. Cody is tracking every day. We're looking at that and hospitalizations and the other indicators. But, you know, what we're trying to do here with this risk reduction order is have very strict, very significant safety protocols in place that if we can collectively implement in a uniform, consistent, rigorous manner, we hope will allow us to continue to keep the virus as contained as possible here in Santa Clara County. That means that not everything can be done, right? But the hope is to have rules that are simpler, clearer, and as consistent as possible so that we can actually be putting them into practice every single day in every single interaction. Because it's that rigorous adherence that is essential to being able to keep things contained.
James, thank you very much for the explanation. I hope that folks found this very helpful. And again, there's a Spanish language Facebook Live that is coming up right after this. We also will have another Facebook Live on Friday where we'll be talking more about some of the elements of this new order. And of course, the directives are being posted, you know, today, later today, and tomorrow. And so hopefully people will keep an eye on that. And let me just repeat those websites: COVID-19prepared.org, sccgov.org/CV19, sccgov.org/coronavirus. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching this. Stay tuned. Stay safe out there. Thank you very much, Santa Clara.
Thank you.